Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. I talk about a lot of different aspects of my life on this channel. Normally the things that I've bought which have left me bankrupt, the occasional life disaster which likes to pop up every now and again. I've even talked to you about my moon cup, which I feel like took us to a whole new level of friendship in that video. But something that I've never really talked about on here for some reason is my love for a good book. I mean, I've definitely told you before that I love reading and writing. You guys know I did an English literature degree at uni, so now I officially love reading, and it says it on a formal piece of paper. But I just thought it might be quite a cool new addition to my channel if I was to start like a semi-regular video series about the books I've been reading recently. What they're all about, whether I've loved them, whether I've had to drag myself through to that final page. So kind of like our own little book club, but I'm too much of a cheapskate to provide the biscuits for you, so you have to provide your own. Deal? Anyway, if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see me do another one, then please don't forget to chuck me a thumbs up while you're watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you are new around here. And let's kick things off with my first book video. Woo, reading! So first up is one that I don't actually have the physical book for because it's on my Kindle, but this is called The Girl Before, and it's by an author called J.P. Delaney. I found out that J.P. Delaney is actually a pseudonym for an unknown writer who's apparently written best-selling fiction under other names before, which I thought was pretty cool. I kind of love the idea of a mystery author, especially for a thriller like this one is. So this one is interesting because it's actually two stories written at different points in time, which are then intertwined together by one common theme which will reveal itself. First of all, there's Emma, who experiences a violent break-in and needs to move house, but nowhere seems to quite fit the bill until she sees 1 Falgate Street. It's this amazing build, it's super modern, high-tech, but it also comes with a very intense architect owner. Then there's also the story of Jane, who's looking for a fresh start after a load of crap and decides that 1 Falgate Street, see the theme now, hey? However, once Jane moves into the house, she notices that there's some strange goings on starting to unfold, and this is where Emma's past and Jane's present suddenly become mysteriously combined for the story. I won't be giving any spoilers away in this video because spoilers do my head in, so I'll just have to say that in general, I really enjoyed the double perspective of this one. It's definitely a page turner, and I thought it was a very clever, but also very strange and unique story. I've never really read anything like this before. However, without giving anything away, don't worry, I wasn't massively satisfied by the ending. I kind of wanted it to be a bit more creepy and scary than it actually was, but that's just probably me being a weirdo. I didn't get to the end of the book and be like, what an ending. Anyway, apart from me being a weirdo and wanting more creepiness, I really enjoyed this book overall, and I've also seen that Universal Pictures have bought the film rights for this one, so I can imagine it's going to be the next Gone Girl, Girl on the Train kind of thing, which is definitely the kind of movie that I'm into, so thumbs up for this one, I enjoyed it. Number 2 is The Roanoke Girls by Amy Engel. And man, I loved this book so much. The hook for this one on the cover is "Roanoke girls never last long around here. In the end, we either run or we die." And that's the kind of line that makes me want to dive headfirst into a story. It's all about Lane Roanoke, who, after her mum killed herself, is sent to live with her grandparents at their rural home in the middle of nowhere, and her cousin Allegra also lives there with them. All Lane really knows about them, because she wasn't very close to her mum, is that her mum ran away from the family home when she was younger. But it turns out there's some seriously dark, dangerous secrets that run way back in the Roanoke family history and all the girls that came before Lane and Allegra in the family. This story turns out to be pretty twisted, but I loved every second of it. It is disturbing and haunting and sometimes really uncomfortable to read, and even though it can be quite a dark and unsettling read, I found that I absolutely adored the two main girls, Lane and Allegra, and their really kind of strong connection and bond and friendship. I actually loved them so much as characters that I was really sad to let them go when I finished the book, and I feel like that is such a good sign of a great author. It just made me feel so many things. It's really beautifully written in its like tortured kind of ways. And I thought I would just mention as well, just as a side note, there are some potential triggers in this story, mainly to do with sexual abuse. So if that's something that affects you, it might be good to have a little read around the book itself first before you dive straight in. But all in all, real good. One of my absolute faves, one of the best things that I've read in a really long time. Number 3 is Girls on Fire by Robin Wasserman. Wasserman, I'm not too sure how you say that one. And it's taken me up until this point in my life to realise that I obviously gravitate towards books with girl or girls in the title, which is kind of weird. I had a bit of a weird journey with it. I started out absolutely loving it and loved the whole vibe of the story, but I ended up kind of hating it, which was an interesting turn. For some reason, I found the characters incredibly frustrating and really quite unlikable, which is unusual for me. So this one is a story of female friendship, but more so looking at how destructive and damaging that it can become, rather than all the usual like girl power, we can get through anything kind of angle. It is set in the early 90s, which is cool, and tells the story of Hannah, otherwise known as Dex, who is super quiet, kind of self-loathing, bit of a wallflower, and the girl who becomes her best friend, Lacey, who is the epitome of a wild child. They meet each other while their hometown is in the midst of a tragedy after a boy at school commits suicide in the woods. And there's rumours of satanic worship being linked to his death all around the town. The story alternates between the two girls' perspectives, and then sometimes also features like a separate, more omniscient perspective as well, which is also cool because it gives the story a whole different angle. And it explores these kind of darker tropes and ideas while looking at how teenage female friendship can become this intense and obsessive and all-consuming part of a girl's life. I enjoyed it on the whole, but as I said, towards the end, maybe the kind of like third quarter of the book, I did find that I was like dragging myself through treacle a little bit, trying to get through it. I hate being negative about books because I know how hard it is to write a book, but I just felt that at times it was a little bit cliched. It made me just feel a little bit cringed out a bit with all the like edgy Kurt Cobain references and the bad girls doing crazy things and this kind of like fake deepness to the wild child character who like loved dead things and winter. I felt like the two main girls were like almost caricatures of themselves sometimes rather than being like well-rounded, believable characters. But that might just be because I tend to read a lot of books of a similar nature that I've maybe preferred before. So if you haven't read anything similar to this in a while, it will be a really good one to go for, and it is enjoyable, but just not my fave of the bunch, mainly because the characters are just a bit annoying. Number 4, a little bit different. This is called The Power by Naomi Alderman, and whoa, what a read this was. This was a kick-ass book. It probably helped that I read this on holiday while floating on a lilo. I feel like that makes you love a book like 10 times more than if you were just reading it at home on the bus. If you are all about smashing the patriarchy, promoting feminist ideals, if you love an embodiment of girl power, this is the story for you. Can't really tell you too much about this one without giving away the story, but basically imagine a world where teenage girls wake up one day and find that they have insane physical strength and unbeatable power at their fingertips, which no man stands a chance against. And then on top of that, imagine if they can awaken the same power in older women as well. So good. I love the premise of this. I thought it translated really well into the story. And the story is all about how the balance of the world that we know would change for the better, but also for the worse if such a thing were to actually happen. I also really loved the way that it explored the idea through 4 different viewpoints, kind of across the world and within different societies to see how it would affect all different types of life. Obviously, you probably guessed that this is looking at gender issues and stereotypes. It's looking at the hierarchy of the world and society between men and women, and it kind of goes without saying that it's exploring the meaning of power itself, I guess. It was interesting because I felt like this one was starting out just as like your average kind of fantasy novel, but it turned into something much more kind of groundbreaking and important. And it really struck a chord with me because I guess topics like this right now are super relevant to all of us. Slightly more intelligent read maybe than the others that I've mentioned so far. A little bit more of a challenge, but only in the way that it's just kind of thought-provoking. I'm excited to talk about this one. Number 5 is The Girls by Emma Cline, and this is definitely in my top 2, maybe 3 books from this entire bunch. The Girls is inspired by the Manson murders, the Manson cult, Charles Manson, which is obviously a true story. And for some reason, it's a story that sparks a weirdly morbid fascination in me. I've always been quite interested in it. I love a good documentary about the Mansons, and I thought it translated really well into fiction, and I particularly like that it was from quite a young female perspective. So it's set in 1969 in California. The main character is Evie Boyd. She's 14 and leading your pretty much average life as a 14-year-old, but just desperately wants to be noticed and to have a little bit more excitement. Then one day, I think it's at like a village fair or a carnival or something, she spots a gang of girls across the way who to her are everything that defines beautiful and cool and confident, especially the main girl called Suzanne. Desperate to become one of them and part of their lives and their gang, Evie willingly starts to integrate herself into their circle and the ranch which they're living at. But of course, she is completely oblivious as to what's really going on at the centre of it all. Evie tells her story in two parts, going back and forth from what's happening now in her current life to what happened back then. And I thought this worked really well to create tension because obviously it's based on a true story. We all know the train wreck is coming, but Evie is completely oblivious. I love the language of this book. It's packed with super cool imagery, captivating sentences, stuff that you kind of like want to make a note of and write it across the front of your notebook because it's just so beautifully written. Absolutely love this one, couldn't put it down. Right up my street, so good. Number 6, I finally have the physical copy to show you. Number 6 is Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. Oh hey, the most hyped up young adult fiction book of the entire universe. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what made me reach for this. It's not really my usual cup of tea anymore, but I think I was maybe kind of brainwashed by seeing the cute cover all over the place since like 2015. In a very brief nutshell, we meet Maddie, who's been ill since she was born. She's got a rare disease, which means that she's unable to leave the house. But then when she's 18, guess who happens to move in next door but the most handsome specimen that she's ever witnessed? Yes, they fall in love. Yes, it's very sweet and also extremely sad. I think I did actually cry for a couple of pages. I really liked that it was an example of an actually good, respectful boyfriend in young adult fiction, which almost never happens. Boyfriends in YA fiction are usually so problematic. They're literally always arseholes, so it was nice to have an example of a nice boy treating a girl well. And I also like that the main character is biracial, which also doesn't happen very often. Actually, the more I think out loud about this book, the more it definitely has a lot of positives, and it's a great example of a good, well-rounded YA read. But again, I think because I tend to surround myself with horrendous, vaguely terrifying thrillers, this just felt a bit wet. I'm not just saying this either, but I also guessed the twist at the end pretty early on, which I usually never manage to do. So I'm not sure whether that's because it's obvious or because I've watched true crime videos about a similar story that happened in real life. But anyway, I guessed it, so I didn't have that like big, amazing reveal moment at the end. It is super cute though, I get it. It is a really enjoyable read, and to be honest, I probably would have been completely and utterly obsessed with this when I was like 16, so... 7. Back to the thrillers. In a Cottage in a Wood by Cass Green. Holy crap! If you are looking for a book that scares you so much that you have to stay awake until about 2:45 in the morning to finish it, this is the one. Because that is legit what happened to me. I looked like a banshee the morning after I'd read this. Because I literally just couldn't put it down. I read the whole thing in one sitting because it is creepy. The main character, Neve, is heading home after a night out. She meets a woman called Isabel on Waterloo Bridge, who then shoves a package into Neve's hand and then throws herself to an icy death into the Thames. Turns out the package contains keys to a cottage in Cornwall, which might sound like the dream, but when Neve then arrives in Cornwall to potentially the creepiest house of all time, the dream quickly becomes a nightmare. As you can probably tell by the ghostly cover, the house is full of twisted, confusing, unpredictable secrets. You might find that it's a little bit of a slow burner at times, kind of like the second half of the beginning is a little bit slow to get started, but oh my god, the last few chapters of this, as everything starts to fall in place, whoa, it's good. Number 8. Told you this was a random selection. This is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I actually read this book at school for A-level or GCSE. I can't remember which one. But obviously because it was a prescribed text for the curriculum, I absolutely hated it and didn't give it a chance at all. Now that I've had the opportunity to read it without analysing it to death, I absolutely adored it. This was another one that I could not put down. I loved every single page. I'm sure you probably know the plot to this book because it is very famous and like critically acclaimed. But for those of you who don't, this is a dystopian fiction. So your main gal, Offred, She is a handmaid in the Republic of Gilead. She used to be a normal woman with a life and a career and a family, basically everything that we take for granted. But reproduction has become a major issue thanks to all the like environmental toxins and stuff, leaving the majority of women infertile. And then you can add to that the religious right coming into power in this version of America, and they begin an insane regime that basically strips women of their identity, their rights, even their name, their body. Any woman that can have a baby becomes a handmaid, who has the sole purpose of them becoming pregnant to their male commander. I'm not actually going to say any more about the plot because I think part of the like fascinating horror of reading this novel for yourself is seeing the words on the page unfold to describe this total nightmare society. Pretty much every single detail of the story just makes the world become worse and worse, which I think is a big part of the experience of reading The Handmaid's Tale. The context of The Handmaid's Tale is also super interesting because it reads like something that could have been written literally within the last couple of years or literally the past couple of months. But it was actually written in 1986, so it's way ahead of its time. It's just so uncomfortably reminiscent of recent history, current society, gender politics, political climates, things that are literally happening right now. Planned Parenthood. I love the style of writing of this too. It's almost quite like claustrophobic to read in the way that there's like no speech marks to differentiate one character from the other. It has kind of like an enclosed feeling when you read it, and it might leave you feeling like a bit of a hollow shell while you're reading, but once you're finished, it is so good and so intense. 9 is Local Girl Missing by Claire Douglas. And I do actually promise that this is the last book with girl in the title that will be featured in this video. I promise. Sophie and Frankie were best friends as teenagers, but then they fall out over some difficult relationships and romances. But then after uni, they bump into each other again. But then one fateful stormy night, Sophie disappears from the pier of their hometown and her body is never recovered until now. Oh god, they all sound so cheesy when you like explain the plot out loud. But Frankie, who's now living the high life in London, she heads back to their hometown, Old Cliff on the Sea, I think it's called, to help him uncover what really happened all those years ago. That's the basic premise anyway. Various creepy things happen along the way. It's impossible to know who to trust and who to suspect. However, the main character, Frankie, is maybe the most aggravating, annoying character I have ever come across. Oh my god, I hated her. Like, actually hated her. She is just a big old whinge bag. I thought she was really selfish, she was spoiled, she definitely fancied herself loads. So I feel like with that much hatred for the main character, I think Frankie probably put me off enjoying this book to its full potential. And I also found the ending and the conclusion to just be a little bit far-fetched. So Local Girl Missing, I'd probably still give it a 3 out of 5. I'd say it's worth a read. I did enjoy the dual perspective from both the girls to cover like the past and the present alongside each other. But it just definitely loses a few points for the worst protagonist of all time. And last but not least, I'm ending on high with my most recent read. This is number 10, which is Sweet Little Lies by Kaz Freer. I loved the style of writing for this. It felt really realistic and organic, and like I was listening to an actual 26-year-old girl. And I also loved that some of it is based in the 90s, so there's a lot of references to the Spice Girls. So Sweet Little Lies is all about a police officer called Kat. In the summer of 1998, when Kat is just a kid, 17-year-old Marianne Doyle goes missing. Kat's dad tells the police that he didn't know her, but as a child, Kat saw the two of them flirting and knows that her dad is lying. So when Kat is then working as a DC, 18 years later in London, she's not having a great time when the discovery of a murdered woman near her dad's pub brings up a ton of evidence that links the mystery death back to missing Marianne. So then the story unfolds as Kat kind of wrestles with her duty as a police officer against her family bonds. But then as well as that, the plot that develops around the murder is amazing. It's much deeper and much kind of more disturbing than I was expecting. And I also really loved the police angle that the story includes. I felt like it was really well crafted and felt like a really kind of highbrow police drama, kind of like Luther or something. Most importantly, I guess, I just really loved Kat, the main character, because she was just so natural and normal and believable and upfront about her flaws, which made her a little bit vulnerable, and I just really liked her. So all in all, great book, great style, great characters, great storyline, great twist. Great! So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, something a little bit different from my channel. Let's have a chat in the comments down below. I want to hear what you think. Have you read any of these books? Are any of them your faves? Did you hate any of them? Have you added any of them to your reading list after watching me ramble on about them? If you did enjoy this video, then please do give it a little thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you are new. I'm actually getting close to 50,000 subscribers. I don't know what's going on, but it's quite exciting. So if you'd like to subscribe, then that would be great. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Don't forget you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, both at Lucy Jane Wood, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye! Mwah.